Collector Archive Services is pleased to present Collecting 101, where collectors and experts in the hobby share their knowledge and expertise about the collectibles we love. Visit our website at collectorarchive.com for grading and preserving of your collectible toys, video games, and sports memorabilia.
Hello everyone, I'm Joshua Van Pelt from the Power and the Honor Foundation for today's CAS 101 episode number 1 of our HeMan and the Masters of the Universe cardback series. This journey will take us through the wonderful universe that is MOTU, starting with the original 8-back figure release, through the various cardback changes, variations, and even touch upon a few foreign releases. I'll be your host as we take a tour exploring the most powerful toy line of all time, starting with Episode 1, 5 Facts About 8-Backs. While this won't be a complete guide to collecting 8-Backs, I hope these 5 fun facts motivate you to go out and explore these original Masters of the Universe figures. Fact 1. There are actually 3 different US 8-back card variations. All 8-back cards will be dated 1981, since that was when they were originally laid out and printing began. Maybe not all, but we'll get to that. All of the 8-backs will say Made in Taiwan on the reverse. The earliest 8-backs are sometimes called test market or G0 cards. It's not known exactly when or where these were released, although we can be pretty confident that it was before March of 1982. It is unclear if it was an actual test market or if the first shipment was just very limited in number and thus not widely distributed. Regardless, I'll use test market for the very first release just to make things clear. The most obvious difference with these cardbacks can be seen on the reverse. There's no tagline or SKU under each character's name, and no 90-day warranty. The first mass-produced, mass-distributed version without warranty is known as G1. It is missing the 90-day warranty lines that we found on the later final 8-back cards, but has the SKU numbers and the tagline under the characters that were missing from the test market cards. The final 8-back card variant, as I just alluded to, is similar to the second version, but now includes a 90-day warranty across the bottom and is called G2. One other change on the back of the 8-back cards had to do with the position and layout of the character images. For example, Man-at-Arms moved from the upper right on the test market and G1 cards to the bottom left on the G2. There are no major differences to the front of the 3 cardbacks, although you can sometimes guess which cardback version you have from the figure itself, which leads us to Fact 2. The figures that came on the 8-back cards aren't only different from later releases, but there are also differences between the figures at various points within the 8-backs. All of the 1982 figures were made in Taiwan and will feature 1981 date stamps. Since these were brand new molds, the details on all the figures are very sharp, with many notable differences from later issues. There are many differences for each figure, so I'll just highlight some of the more obvious and interesting ones. There are variants on their figures, their paint apps, and their weapons, and even their accessories. There are a few different variants that can be found on the various 8-back cards, with some really rare figure cardback combinations. This is most likely due to the fact that the card transitions and the figure changes weren't a coordinated effort, and some overlap of changes occurred. HeMan. The earliest HeMan has a belly button, and the very earliest even have an odd-shaped, uneven belly button. The paint apps on the earliest HeMan figure are sharper. Paint on the boots goes up only halfway on the fur part of the 8-back figures, although that does not appear to be the case on the test market version, where the boots are a brighter red, and there are weapon differences to watch out for from the various 8-back releases. The test market accessories will be unmarked. Skeletor. One of the most easily identified loose 8-back figures would be the half-boot Skeletor. This variant can be found on the test market and the G1 cards, although fully painted boot versions can also be found on the G1 cards. There are 3 distinct face paint apps on the 8-back Skeletors. The earliest figures have peach cheeks, which were missing from the later 2 versions, and is by far the coolest. And, as with HeMan, there are weapon differences to watch out for from the various 8-back Skeletor releases. Beastman. There are 2 variants of Beastman found on the test market cardbacks. It is assumed that the version with the bright white dots in his eyes is the earliest, with that paint app being dropped quickly. The test market figures also have a more contained blue painted circle on the front of his armor. Confusing the issue is that the eye dots return for the G1 and G2 cards, but they are now a more off-white color. Tila. The 8-back Tila may have the rarest variant out of all the first figure paint changes. A very few Tilas may have been released with green painted eyes on her snake armor, similar to what is seen in early catalog photography and promotional pieces. The vast majority of 8-back Tilas are relatively the same regardless of which 8-back card they are on. The biggest differences between the early and later Tila figures are actually her accessories. The earliest figures had darker, translucent accessories versus the more opaque, lighter color versions on the later 8-backs. Merman. All 8-back versions of Merman feature a green painted belt, which would be unpainted in later releases. Merman was either a very good figure or just got ignored by Mattel, because he didn't undergo nearly as many changes as some of the other original figures. Stratos. The earliest 8-back Stratos figures feature a unique blue beard and blue eyelids. This was replaced very early on with the gray beard, which is how all of the early product photography and prototypes show him being painted. Stratos can be found with red wings and a blue jetpack, or blue wings and a red jetpack. These two color combos were maintained throughout the future releases of Stratos as well. There are also tab differences on his harness that can be found in both colors. Man-at-Arms. The first Taiwan Man-at-Arms are easy to distinguish because of the red dots on his helmet, along with a few other differences, but this is the most obvious difference from future releases. This correction seems to have been made during the second cardback transition, and I believe they can be found on all three cardback versions. Zodak. There are test market Zodak figures with a unique back latch on his armor, but this appears to have been changed very quickly to the more traditional latch and longer straps. There are no major differences to the figure itself from the earliest Taiwan figures and the subsequent 8-back figures, although there is a difference in the hardness and flexibility between the early and later figures. Bonus fact: all of the first figures were released with armor that had short straps, as compared to future releases. It's obvious why this was changed, since longer straps made it easier for kids to tighten. It's sometimes difficult to tell if a carded figure has short or long straps, but it is possible. There are some differences between some short straps that can be easily noted by different mold markings on the inside, such as the 5 and 10 versions. The long straps were used for all the figures by sometime in 1983. As with most of these running changes, they overlap with the cardback changes and can be found with different paint variants, as well as later 8-back cards with second series comics. Fact 3. The cross-cell artwork on the 8-backs is similar with the high-end artwork used on the vehicle and playset box art. They set the standard of using artwork rather than the actual product photographs that would be carried throughout the entire line. The original paintings were each about 8 inches tall, each done on separate artist board. It is currently unknown who painted these first cross-cell paintings, although William George painted some of the cross-cell art starting in 1985. These original 8-back cross-cells appear to be done by a different artist. The cross-cell artwork layout is the same for each figure, making it impossible to tell the figure from the back of the card. Missing from the 8-backs is the art scene across the top and the action feature instructions down the side. Errol McCarthy did almost all the cardback art, starting with the 12-backs, all the way through the laser power and laser light figures, and even for a few unnamed, unreleased figures. But getting back to the 8-backs. Fact 4. The mini-comics are just as an important part of the MOTU as the figures themselves, and they started with the 8-back figures, and you guessed it, there are variations to the mini-comics. HeMan and the Power Sword was packaged with HeMan. King of Castle Grayskull was packaged with Skeletor, Merman, and Man-at-Arms. Battle in the Clouds was packaged with Merman and Tila. The Vengeance of Skeletor was packaged with Beastman, Man-at-Arms, Stratos, and Zodak. The test-marketed carded figures came with the free burst on the front and the Hot Wheels ad on the back cover. I'm not sure if all the test markets had this very early Hot Wheels version, since they are very hard to find. The G1 cardbacks come with both the free burst as well as the burst with the word free removed. G1 and G2 cardbacks can both be found with mini-comics with no burst on the front cover. Fact 5. Faker, the fake 8-back figure? The first Faker figures were actually released on G2 8-back cards, even though he was not one of the original 8-back figures. This was very late in the 1982 run, and he was quickly transitioned to the 12-back 1983 card. Bonus fact, there are 8-back versions of Battle Cat, Battle Ram, Wind Raider, and Castle Grayskull. And yes, there are non-US released 8-back and 6-back cards, but let's save those for a future CAS 101 episode. Those are my 5 facts about the 8-backs, with a few bonus facts that I couldn't leave out. If you have any other facts you'd like to add, please drop your comments below. Stay tuned for our next video, 5 facts about the 12-backs. You have the power.